Every fighter knows the legal targets. Almost nobody talks about the switches that shut the body down. I'm not going to show you how to hit these places. I'm going to show you why the rules exist to protect them, and what actually happens inside the body when things go wrong. This isn't about movies or mystical death touches. This is about real nervous system responses that doctors document and rule makers understand. Death touch, dim mak, magic nerve strikes from Hollywood. Most of that is fantasy, but not all of it. The human nervous system is incredibly strong, but it has control centers that can fail when overloaded, switches that can misfire, reflexes that can betray you. These aren't guaranteed off switches. They're high-risk zones where bad things can happen fast, sometimes predictably, sometimes randomly. The difference between myth and reality is probability. Movies show certainty. Real physiology shows risk. That's why rules exist. Combat sports learn these lessons through injuries, deaths, and decades of medical data. Before we talk about 7 nerve switches, there's Rule 0, the brain itself. Most dramatic shutdowns don't come from pressure points. They come from acceleration and rotation. When the head moves suddenly, the brain moves inside the skull. Neural pathways get disrupted. Signals scramble, consciousness drops. That's a concussion. This happens in legal shots too. A perfectly legal hook can cause the head to snap sideways. The brain accelerates, neurons misfire, and the person goes down hard. That's why strikes to the back of the head are banned, why standing counts exist, why medical suspensions are mandatory. Everything is designed to limit repeated neural trauma. Professional fighters understand this intimately. They've seen teammates develop speech problems, memory issues. The brain keeps score of every shot. Now, the 7 switches. Switch number 7, the balance breaker. The balance breaker lives in your inner ear. 3 tiny semicircular canals filled with fluid. They tell your brain which way is up. When this system gets overloaded, spatial orientation fails. The brain receives conflicting signals. Posture fails. People wobble, stumble, fall without feeling knocked out. In combat sports, you see this after legal shots near the ear region. Fighters take what looks like a minor impact. Then they're stumbling like they're drunk. Their balance system got scrambled. The fluid in those tiny canals sloshed the wrong way. Now their brain thinks the ground is tilted. It's not mystical. It's vestibular physiology, the same thing that happens when you spin around too fast. The balance system can recover quickly, or it can stay disrupted for minutes. Some fighters report feeling dizzy for days after certain impacts. Medical commissions test for this specifically. They check balance, coordination, spatial awareness, because a fighter with a damaged balance system is dangerous to themselves and others. Switch number 6, the breath stealer. Breathing is supposed to be automatic. The diaphragm contracts and relaxes in perfect timing. You don't think about it. It just happens. Until it doesn't. A sudden shock can disrupt this automatic system. The diaphragm spasms, locks up. The breathing rhythm gets scrambled. The fighter wants air desperately. They're conscious. They're trying to breathe, but the system won't respond. Like trying to start a car with a dead battery. In fights, you see this after heavy body impacts. Legal shots to the torso that seem manageable. Then the fighter stops moving, stops defending. Their hands drop. They're not hurt in the traditional sense. No bones broken, but they can't breathe effectively. The automatic system crashed. Referees watch for this carefully. A fighter who can't breathe can't defend themselves. Their brain starts making poor decisions as oxygen levels drop. The breathing system usually recovers within seconds to minutes. But those seconds feel like hours when you can't get air. Switch number 5, the limb delete. Motor nerves are like electrical cables running from your brain to your muscles. They carry commands. Move this arm, bend that leg. When these nerve pathways get overloaded, the signals scramble. Commands don't reach their destination. Motor control drops out suddenly. It's not paralysis. The muscles aren't damaged. The electrical signal just got jammed, like static on a radio. In fights, this shows up as sudden loss of function. A hand stops responding to commands. An arm goes limp for no visible reason. A leg buckles when it should support weight. Fighters describe it as strange. They want to move. They're sending the command, but nothing happens. The limb is still there, but it won't obey. This usually happens after impacts to areas where major nerve bundles pass close to the surface. The effect is usually temporary, but in a fight, temporary is enough. Medical literature documents cases of permanent nerve damage from repeated trauma to these areas. Loss of sensation, reduced motor control, career-ending injuries. Switch number 4, the pain floodgate. Pain is usually manageable. Fighters train to deal with it, build tolerance, fight through injury. But some nerve clusters are different. They're like fire alarms connected to the entire nervous system. When they activate, everything else stops. These areas contain dense concentrations of pain receptors. When these clusters get stimulated suddenly, they can flood the entire nervous system, overwhelm the brain's processing capacity. It's not about being tough or weak. The signal is so intense, it overrides conscious control, like staring directly into the sun. Your eyes close whether you want them to or not. In combat sports, legal strikes to these areas can cause immediate shutdown. Not from damage, from sensory overload. The nervous system goes into emergency mode. Fighters who can normally absorb tremendous punishment suddenly collapse. Their brain can't process anything else while managing the flood of pain signals. The effect usually fades quickly. The nervous system adapts, but those first few seconds of overwhelming input can end a fight. Switch number 3, the blood pressure hack. Your cardiovascular system runs on autopilot. Special sensors monitor pressure continuously. Baroreceptors, they detect pressure changes and signal the brain to make adjustments. But sensors can be tricked, given false information, made to think pressure is dangerously high when it's actually normal. When baroreceptors get confused, they can trigger emergency responses. Blood pressure drops rapidly. Heart rate slows dramatically. Blood flow to the brain decreases. The result is predictable: dizziness, weakness, sometimes fainting. The body prioritizes survival over consciousness. In fights, this has been observed after impacts to areas where these sensors cluster. Legal strikes that seem minor but cause dramatic effects. Fighters collapse from contact that looks insufficient. Their cardiovascular system got hacked. The sensors received overwhelming input. The autopilot decided to shut down non-essential functions, including consciousness. This response is involuntary, can't be trained against, can't be toughed out. It's a hardwired survival mechanism. Switch number 2, the autopilot override. The autonomic nervous system runs everything you don't think about: heart rate, breathing rhythm, digestion, fight or flight responses. 2 main branches control this system: gas pedal and brake, action and rest. They balance each other perfectly under normal conditions. When this balance gets disrupted suddenly, the system can overcorrect. The brake gets slammed too hard. Everything slows down dramatically. The vagus nerve is a key player in this system. When it activates inappropriately, it can trigger massive responses. Heart rate drops, blood pressure falls, consciousness fades. This is different from the blood pressure sensors. This affects your entire nervous system's operating mode, rather than just cardiovascular monitoring. This happens in medical settings regularly. Blood draws, emotional shock, sudden pain. The body hits the emergency brake. In combat situations, the wrong stimulus can trigger this response. The autopilot decides the situation is too dangerous, forces a shutdown to protect vital organs. Fighters describe it as strange. One moment they're fine, the next they're on the ground. No pain, no injury, just sudden overwhelming weakness. Switch number 1, the brainstem red line. The brainstem is mission control. It controls breathing, heart rhythm, blood pressure, consciousness itself. This isn't just another body part. It's the master switch. When it works, you live. When it doesn't, you don't. When brainstem function gets interrupted, everything can stop working. Breathing becomes irregular, heart rhythm changes, blood pressure crashes, consciousness disappears instantly. This isn't a knockout in the traditional sense. It's system failure. The main computer going offline. In combat sports, certain areas are absolutely forbidden because of brainstem proximity, back of the head, specific regions of the neck and spine. The risk isn't just temporary unconsciousness, it's catastrophic failure, respiratory arrest, cardiac complications, permanent neurological damage. One bad impact can shut the entire system down. No warning, just sudden, complete failure. These outcomes are rare but devastating when they occur. Medical literature documents cases where minor trauma to these areas caused major complications. This is why these rules exist, to prevent even the small chance of catastrophic outcomes. What the science says? Medical research documents extensive data on nerve trauma in combat sports. The findings are consistent. Repeated impacts to nerve-dense areas cause problems. Most of these injuries resolve completely. The nervous system is remarkably good at healing itself, but not always. Some martial artists develop chronic symptoms: persistent tingling, reduced sensation, motor control problems, signs of permanent nerve damage. The risk increases with repeated exposure. Each impact adds stress. This isn't about single dramatic injuries. It's about cumulative damage over time. Professional fighters get regular neurological testing, balance assessments, cognitive evaluations, early detection of developing problems. Individual variation is enormous. Some fighters absorb tremendous punishment with no lasting effects. Others develop problems from relatively minor trauma. The science provides probabilities, not certainties. Understanding these factors helps athletes make informed decisions about their careers. Combat sports exist in a unique legal space. Participants consent to activities that would be criminal in other contexts, but that consent has limits. Rules aren't written to make fighters weak. They exist because people died, got permanently injured, lost function they'll never recover. Each forbidden zone represents lessons learned from real consequences. The goal is understanding why these protections exist, not finding ways around them. Using this knowledge irresponsibly crosses legal and ethical lines quickly. The legal system distinguishes between acceptable risk in sport and reckless endangerment, between competitive technique and malicious intent. Outside sporting contexts, these considerations become even more complex. Self-defense claims must meet strict criteria. Real fighters understand these responsibilities. They train to control damage, not maximize it. They protect training partners, respect opponents. This knowledge comes with obligations. Understanding how systems can fail means understanding why they shouldn't be deliberately broken. If you want to be truly dangerous, master control, discipline, respect for the human nervous system and its vulnerabilities. Once you understand how fragile these systems really are, recklessness stops being impressive. It becomes irresponsible. The human body is remarkably resilient, but it has limits, switches that can fail. Every rule in combat sports exists for a reason. Every forbidden zone has a story. Someone got hurt. Someone learned. Someone decided the risk wasn't acceptable. Those lessons were expensive, paid for with injuries, disabilities, sometimes lives. Respecting those sacrifices means respecting the rules that emerged from them. The strongest fighters aren't those who know how to break people. They're those who know when not to, who understand the difference between sport and destruction. True expertise means knowing not just what you can do, but what you should do. Having the power to cause damage and the wisdom not to use it. The nervous system is incredibly complex, remarkably robust, but ultimately fragile. Understanding that fragility is the first step toward respecting it. What you do with this knowledge defines who you are. Choose wisely.